This is Jason. This is Jason's iPad Mini 7. While unsure if the iPad Mini 7 was the right choice in iPad for him, Jason bought the iPad Mini 7 so he could review it for his YouTube channel. Not wanting to have more than one iPad, Jason sold his iPad Pro 13-inch with the M4 chip. It had 2 terabytes of storage and he paid for the Magic Keyboard and the Apple Pencil Pro. It was kind of stupid to sell that iPad because it was pretty new and it was very expensive, and Jason ended up selling it for a lot less than he paid for it, so he lost money. Jason is not very good with money, and he tends to make rash decisions with money that he often regrets. He is often disappointed in himself, and that leads to low self-esteem, which leads to him buying more tech products, which then leads to him regretting the purchase, and the vicious cycle starts all over again. But this is not a video about Jason and his poor money management and low self-esteem. This is a video about the iPad Mini 7.
I love the idea of the iPad Mini. It's small, it's pretty powerful and bigger than my phone by some, and smaller than my laptop. But the small size, while being a standout feature, is also its greatest weakness. Let me explain. Apple last released a new iPad Mini in 2021, and that iPad Mini, the iPad Mini 6, was long overdue. They seem to like to wait long enough that everyone wonders if they're even going to bother with a new iPad at all. And here they did it again. To put it through its paces, I did something a little odd. I sold my 13-inch iPad Pro M4 and got this. Now, I didn't only sell it to get this, but I got this and I figured I don't need 2 iPads, so I went all in. I've used it for the past 2 weeks, and I'm gonna tell you what I think about it now that that time is done. What do I do with the iPad? Well, I write stuff. I'm writing a novel. I take notes, I journal, I do all that kind of stuff. I watch content on my iPad, in the evening. I might do things like every afternoon I check my schedule, and in the evening I watch some YouTube or something like that, and then I use it to read as an e-reader. So that's a pretty diverse group of things to do with an iPad, but the question is, how did this hold up compared to both the larger iPad that I had before and in general as a device in its own right? If you've touched an iPad Mini in the past several years, the iPad Mini 7 is nothing new. In fact, it has even the same wallpaper that the iPad Mini 6 had. Apple didn't even really design like a new wallpaper. That's usually the least that they do. The body colors this time around are slightly different, but the screen is pretty much the same. It's an 8.3-inch Liquid Retina LCD. That's either a good thing or a bad thing, depending on how much you're sensitive to this jelly scrolling thing that people talk about. I personally don't notice it, so it's not a big deal to me, but if you're one of those people whose screen bothers you if it does funny things or it doesn't have enough refresh rate or whatever it is, then you might want to get another iPad. The screen is bright enough at 500 nits to be able to go anywhere indoors and read it, and maybe even be too bright. But if you try and take it outside, not bright enough. And if I'm being honest, the Liquid Retina display looks and feels a little tired compared to the tandem OLED screen that I came from on the iPad Pro. And I would say, well, this is a much cheaper iPad, and kind of it is, kind of it's not. It has Touch ID right here, which I found annoying to use after being used to Face ID for so long with the iPad Pros. But Touch ID gets the job done. You just have to remember to register each of your index fingers, because when in landscape mode, it's over here, and when in portrait mode, it's up here. And so I didn't think to do that, and so I'm always doing the old reach around. No fun at all. On the inside, there's the A17 Pro chip, which is the same chip that's in the iPhone 15 Pro and Pro Max. It's a powerful chip. Probably overkill for anything that you might want to do on an iPad Mini. Apple will tell you that this chip is in here because it makes it able to support Apple Intelligence, which is either a blessing or a curse, depending on how you feel about Apple Intelligence. I mean, I kind of have mixed feelings, and I'm going to detail those mixed feelings in a video coming up soon. So do subscribe if you want to see me rant about what I think of Apple Intelligence and maybe generative AI in general. didn't find myself actually doing anything that might tax the A17 Pro, partly because there's not much you can do on an iPad this size that's that strenuous. Maybe gaming. A lot of people have talked about the gaming prowess of the iPad mini 7 and how it's a great mobile gaming machine. And it probably is, but the problem is I don't play mobile games. So even if I tried to game on this, I wouldn't really be a good judge of whether or not it's good for gaming. I would typically edit some videos or use Canva to create thumbnails and other visual art stuff for my channel or for other things that I do. I make t-shirts. I got t-shirts for sale on Amazon. If you want I'll put the link down in the description. You can go check out the t-shirts that I made that are not related to my channel in any way, shape, or form. But honestly, I didn't bother editing a video or doing any audio stuff or anything like that on the iPad mini just because it felt like the canvas was too small. If I had to do stuff on the go and I only wanted to carry this, I guess I would do it. I've edited videos on my phone before, so it's possible, just not my thing. It might not be yours. It might be yours. I don't know. The iPad mini does have an upgraded USB-C port, which is nice. It transfers data at a higher speed than the iPad mini 6 did, which would be great if you used it for content creation, because then you can use an external hard drive and record stuff to the hard drive, because with 128 gigabytes in this base model, it's not a lot of storage space for any kind of video, even any kind of audio. But again, I couldn't bring myself to use this as the hub for some kind of video setup. When I had my iPad Pro, I used my iPhone 15 Pro Max and 16 Pro Max as a dual camera setup with that to then use Final Cut camera to bring it into the iPad, and it was cool, but the Mini just didn't seem like the tool for that job. The iPad Mini comes in 4 colors, which is great if you like light pastels of blue and purple and a color that Apple calls Starlight and the space gray that we have had since the 2016 Butterfly Keyboard Mac Pro. The same old space gray that we've had forever. Apple didn't change much with this. I got the blue one because it was what they had at Best Buy at the time I was there to buy one, and I put a black Smart Folio on it, this guy, which I like the Smart Folio a lot. Actually, it's my favorite iPad case in general, but honestly, the black with the light blue kind of looks like poop. And I would have gone to the Apple Store, but I live in Iowa, and there's only one Apple Store in the whole state, and it's 2+ hours away from here. The iPad mini 7 comes in 128, 256, and 512 gigabytes of storage with 8 gigs of RAM for all models. This is a bump up from 64 gigabytes to start and 4 gigabytes of RAM in the iPad mini 6. The bump in specs brings it up to the level where it can meet those Apple Intelligence requirements, and these increases seem to be the only benefit that Apple Intelligence offers us at the moment. The back camera is an f1.8 aperture wide angle, and the front camera is an f1.4 ultra wide angle. Those are, they're both totally serviceable cameras if you wanted to use your iPad mini for camera stuff and not be that person with the giant full-size iPad on the vacation taking the pictures. This is what it looks like on the front camera where you're looking at yourself, and this is what it looks like on the back camera when you're trying to take a picture of something else. Or I guess you could point that at yourself too. I don't know. Oh, and it also supports ye old Apple Pencil Pro for $129 extra, which if you bought just the Smart Folio and the Apple Pencil Pro and the iPad base model, you're looking at $700 for the iPad mini 7 base model. And that seems to me a lot of money, but it might not be to you. And while we're talking about things that it supports, the iPad mini is not compatible with any of the iPad-specific keyboards that Apple sells. There's no Magic Keyboard or Folio Keyboard or anything like that. It does have Bluetooth, so there's Bluetooth-compatible keyboards that you can use. I have a Logitech MX Mini keyboard that I use with this guy, and you can see it's kind of silly looking with the phone holder and the iPad and the keyboard, but it works, maybe. This is my desktop setup while using the iPad mini to write and send emails or texts or, the things that you do when you're sitting at your desk. Using the Apple Pencil Pro, for me, frankly, kind of sucked. Maybe it's because I have old man hands. I've got arthritis in this finger. I've got old man hands, and it's hard for me to write legibly in general, but to write legibly on a screen this small was almost impossible. And it's not necessarily the size of the thing that is the problem. Maybe it's the way it works with, I don't know. I have an e-ink tablet that I'm currently reviewing that is about this size, almost exactly this size, maybe a little bit more square. And the writing experience on that thing is fantastic. I'm really enjoying writing on that thing. I don't enjoy writing on this thing. In total, what did I learn in my 2 weeks with the iPad mini? Number one, to hold with one hand like this comfortably or at all, depending on how big your hand is. I can hold it like this for as long as I want. I can rest the Smart Folio on my stomach while I'm watching videos in bed or trying to read in bed. Of course, I have more stomach than I probably need, which gives it a larger expanse to rest on. Your mileage may vary. It's also easier to keep on the couch compared to like a 13-inch iPad so that you can look up the person that's in the movie you're watching who you know you saw in another movie, but you can't remember what it was that you saw them in. And then you look at all their, anyway, you know, you do that too. Everybody does that. Probably its best use case is as an e-reader, especially if you read comics on your iPad, which I typically do. I've stopped buying paper books in general. But for me, here's the rub. I get distracted very easily. I've read thousands of books in my life, but it's really important to me that those books were books and not also video players and email receivers and all those kinds of things. My short attention span makes it hard for me to keep my nose in a book and not checking the social medias or emails or texts or any of that kind of thing. I know you can put it in reading mode and customize that so it doesn't bother you, but I know that I could turn reading mode off anytime that I wanted. And yes, there's probably apps that will not allow you to do that. Anyway, I prefer using a single-use device like a Kindle to do my reading just because it's easier for me to stay focused. But ultimately, a lot of what makes the iPad mini a great, convenient device is also kind of its Achilles heel. It's small, it's easy to carry around, it's bigger than your phone, but once you try and do anything besides consume content, detailed work of any kind, it becomes less attractive. So its utility is pretty much limited to that content consumption and light office work. It might be a good doodle pad if you're a visual artist. Look, it's like this. There's nothing new about the iPad mini 7 when compared to the previous model, or honestly kind of the previous model before that. So it's like 6-7 years of iPad. Maybe that's why it's called the iPad mini 7. It has the same body, the same screen, although somewhat improved because the jelly effect isn't as prevalent somehow, even though it's the same screen. It has some big bezels, but I'm not going to kick it out of bed for eating crackers on that front. At its core, the iPad mini 7 is, I would say, the laziest of lazy spec bumps, and while I appreciate the increased storage and RAM, I could deal with it if there was something the iPad mini excelled at beyond content consumption. But for the most part, it's a rehash of a middle-of-the-road device that Apple is clearly not really interested in, but that has a cult following, and so they know people will buy it. It does some iPad things well, but don't ask it to do any heavy lifting and be comfortable doing that. It doesn't offer the versatility that other iPads offer. And that brings us to what I believe is the nail in the coffin of the iPad mini. It's the reason that I didn't buy the iPad mini 6 in the first place, and that is the price. $500 for this seems ridiculous to me when you can get the iPad Air with an M2 chip with the same storage. Well, I think it's $599, but $499. I've seen it on sale for $499. I get it that it's smaller and you can put it in your jeans pocket or something, and then, maybe doctors and lawyers and such can carry them around and be, doing their thing. For $500, I want a better screen, a newer screen, an OLED screen. I want a slimmer body and bezels like the new iPad Pro has. I mean, this is fatter than the iPad Pro. And I also want a better choice of colors, just a couple more. The iPad mini is a cool idea. There are plenty of people who swear by it. There are professionals who will only use it. I get that. But it doesn't do enough to justify the cost. Maybe you feel differently. Maybe I am way off and you are going to tell me why down in the comments below, right? And don't forget to subscribe if you made it this far, because you made it this far. Why not make a commitment? We're so commitment averse these days.
And so ends our story. While the iPad mini 7 may not be perfect, it will surely be loved by many. And as for Jason, he will have to move on with his newfound mixed emotions, consoled only by the knowledge that he has gained a new friend in you, the intrepid viewer. Thank you for watching our production of Is the iPad mini 7 Worth It? Until the next time. Adieu.